Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty and I'm joined today by Alison McConnell. How are you, Alison?
Very well, thank you. Yourself?
I'm good. It's game day, Alison. Celtic play Jablonec in the second leg of the Europa League qualifier. They're 4-2 ahead. Touch wood. There should be no slip-ups here, but it is Celtic, of course, in Europe.
I wouldn't anticipate a slip-up. I think Ryan Christie's goal just makes it a much more comfortable second leg than what it might have been. I think it just evaporates some of the tension that might have built up around the game. I think the 2-goal cushion was important. And I think also even in the space of just a week since the last tie was played, I think Celtic will be buoyed by the domestic result. It looks as though they're coming together, certainly from middle to front. I think that the confidence levels are higher than what they were a week ago. I think they just look like a more cohesive unit. And there are also options all of a sudden in terms of personnel. Again, I would qualify that by saying the back four and the goalkeeper pretty much pick themselves. But in other areas of the pitch, all of a sudden there are decisions to be made for the manager. But I think they seem to be in a positive place. There's a lot of positive energy on the back of the last week or so. And I think they should go through fairly comfortably this evening.
There's a real spring in the step, as you say there, Alison, and there'll be a bigger spring in the step because tonight they'll be backed by almost 60,000 fans who've waited since March 2020 for this moment. And whilst the opposition might not be of a great standard, it will be one of those great European nights and emotional nights for Celtic fans at Celtic Park, and they'll obviously want to cheer their men on to victory. But maybe see a lot of grown men and women crying tonight, I would have thought, just at the sheer fact they're back in the stadium.
I think there'll just be a sense of relief, a movement back towards normality. I think it might be quite emotional for people who are going back, who have lost people to COVID or who went to games with people who aren't there now for various reasons, who might be too infirm to get to the game or who may have passed during the last 18 months. And I think that would be quite emotional going back to the stadium and back to the ground. I think just the sense of being part of a community again, of being among something that's a big thing. It's a big thing in so many people's lives. I think it has a huge part for people, and I think just going back and back in the team and just being in among people with the same commonalities and the same one goal, I think it will be quite emotional for people.
I can see the bookshelf behind you, Alison. I think it's very much, as John Milton once said, paradise regained, I think, for a lot of people tonight. I would conjecture that's what it'll be like. But I mean, most people's eyes will be on the Japanese boy, Kyogo Furuhashi. 4 goals, 3 appearances, but the ultimate dream debut against Dundee. And I think more and more Celtic fans just want to see more of him, don't they? And see what he can actually do and see if he can produce it consistently. But what a start to his Celtic career.
I think it's been a very exciting start. I think he couldn't have got off he couldn't have dreamed of a better home debut, given the way he came on and the way he took his hat trick. He could have had more, I think. I think the other aspect to it is that he will only get better, given the fact that he's just been introduced to the team. He's not had a huge amount of time to get to know the culture and get to know the players he's playing with, to get to know the way the team are playing. So I think in that respect, it's incredibly exciting to see him come in and do so well immediately, knowing that there are other levels that he can get to. I think he'll be the first name on the team sheet tonight, I would have thought. I think coming into it on the back of a hat trick and an impeccable performance. But I think his movement is exciting. I think he looks like a very creative player. I think he looks intelligent. He's energetic. He offers so much, even when you take away the goals. I think he's a player that Celtic have actually been crying out for in terms of what he gives. I think he'll be quite versatile over the piece. But I fully expect that he'll be the first name on the team sheet this evening.
And also as well, Ange Postecoglou touched on it, that the Dundee game came too soon for James McCarthy. Do you expect to see James McCarthy start tonight, or do you think you'll maybe bring him on at some stage just to let him get used to it and get that first taste of action in a Celtic jersey?
I think I'd be surprised if he started the game. My anticipation would be that he might come on off the bench if the game is at a fairly comfortable level for Celtic. If if the tie is all but secured, I'm not sure he'll start, just given the lack of game time that he's had. But again, I think he'll be assured of a fairly warm welcome. I think he offers an experience and a bit of personality. He brings with it. He brings a lot to offer to the Celtic team, and I think you might see him at some stage this evening.
Frank Brennan coming in there with a comment, Alison, to see Celtic Park full with 60,000 supporters is just going to be fantastic, and particularly for the new signings like Joe Hart. I'm sure he also means James McCarthy, who's going to love it and see them cement their love of the club, and does. I guess that's a measure in the depth of feeling of the Celtic supporters, just their anticipation to get back into the ground and watch football.
Without question, I think, as we touched on, I think it's a huge part of people's lives. I think when you take it away, people would have been desperate to get back. I think we were in a privileged position of still being allowed to go in and watch games and report on games. But for us, it was a very different prospect. So I can't imagine what it was like for players to play in that. So as excited as a supporter at going back this evening, I think you'll also find that the players are excited too, because it's such a different proposition to play in a full Celtic Park with everyone behind you and the floodlights on, and feel the noise and the sense of anticipation of a live game, as opposed to playing out behind closed doors when you can hear your own shouts echoing around the stadium and everyone can hear it. It really reduces the intensity of games, was my feeling and my observations of it. So I think it will be reciprocated tonight. I think that the players will be as happy to see the support as they are, and I think Ange Postecoglou's comment last night when he said, I'll be sitting one day in a beach in a Greek island and recalling that day when I first walked out into that wall of sound.
And the Celtic do it well on European nights with the disco lights that they installed and the light show and all that kind of stuff. They're in a great position tonight, Alison, with the 2-goal cushion, as you say. And I'm not saying they will relax on it, but they can breathe a bit in this tie now, and they can maybe relax and go out and play a bit of football and try and add to the aggregate score, as well as maybe trying to keep a clean sheet in the process as well. Always does wonders for the confidence that moving forward.
I think it just reduces the tension. I think that 2-goal cushion just gives you some breathing space. I think you would fully expect Celtic to go through. I think you would back them to score more goals tonight. I think there's still a question mark defensively. I'm not sure if you could be assured yet of clean sheets, but I certainly think from middle to front, they look like an exciting proposition. I think they look like a team who have got goals in them. And I think over the course of the 2 legs, I think it will be a very comfortable progression.
It ain't broken up front, Alison. I would expect Postecoglou to go with the same Christie, Abada and Furuhashi. Those 3 in particular on Sunday really, really excited the Celtic crowd, didn't they?
I'm the same. I suspect that forward trio will keep their places. I think they'll start the game. I think there's decisions to be made then behind it. I think Callum McGregor will play that deep line role again, and with David Turnbull too. And then I think it's how do you fit James Forrest into it? If he comes in, he's obviously going to have to play on the left again. But I think Forrest gives you so much that I would be inclined to try and shoehorn him in.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, they're good headaches to have for a manager, aren't they? Considering a week ago there was some doom and gloom after they lost to Hearts, but just shows you the difference a week. They say a week's a long time in politics, but things can change in football very quickly, and and I think the Celtic supporters are now somewhere up there, and they need to come down a wee bit after the events of the week, so.
Yeah, I think we know. It's just what a couple of positive results do becomes infectious, just in terms of feeding the energy and feeding the mood. And the converse of that is true. I think the flip side is if you're not doing well and you're losing games, that all of a sudden you can find yourself in a fairly dark place, especially at Celtic or at Rangers, where the pressure and the the intensity is like nowhere else in the country. I think so. I think it can change very quickly. I think the fact that Rangers dropped ground league-wise, dropped points in the league, and meant that Celtic could quickly recover from the setback at Tynecastle just feeds into a level of optimism, and that was encouraged by the manner of the performance then against Dundee. It's now a question of sustaining it and building on it, and trying to produce performances that would suggest that Celtic are moving into a new chapter.
I was going to say, Alan, it was the nature of the performance which I've got the fans up there, isn't it? Because I think it was a performance that certainly put a smile on a lot of people's faces that had been missing for the best part of over a year to 18 months, So they were purring and enthusing about the performance, and I know people were saying it was only Dundee, but if that's the kind of football that Ange wants to play, then I think the Celtic supporters have possibly got a lot to be excited about moving forward, and they can see that as well.
I think the performance of Furuhashi would have gone a long way too. I think all of a sudden there's a new boy in town or someone to come in, and you're thinking, whoa, he looks like he looks like a superb addition to the team. I think everyone loves a hero. I think everyone loves to make someone the focus point, and with Odsonne Edouard clearly on his way out of the club, then I think there's a lot of excitement about that. But you're right. I think the manner of the performance and the goals that came, and what I would say too was probably the hunger within the team, that when the game was long won, there was still a tendency to go and look for goals and to keep going until the end, to keep the goals coming and to keep playing until the final whistle, and to keep playing in the same vein. I think a lot of people would have been heartened with that kind of philosophy and that kind of appetite within the team.
Yeah, because I noticed they scored the penalty in the last minute, but there was a chance created after that for a seventh, and there was about 4 Celtic players lining up to try and put it in the net. And it was that kind of relentless nature of that win that, as you say, they were hungry to score more goals. And then obviously on the back of that, Callum McGregor called it impromptu huddle at the end, and a lot of supporters tuned into that. It just sort of seen there's a lot of togetherness. There was a lot of disconnect last season, but it was a lot of reconnect on the back of last week's result, I felt.
Nothing does that more than winning games. I think everything else pales into comparison. I think as soon as you're winning games, the mood changes considerably. There is nothing that dissipates discord and frustration than winning, and I think it's the only thing, to be honest, that does it. I think you lose a game and you have a mini huddle and you'd be booed off the pitch still. I think the only thing that brings a collective are the performances, and I think that's what has been encouraging in the back of recent weeks. I still think there's work to be done. I think everyone would accept that, but what you're seeing is an indication that they're going in the right direction.
And can they take another step in the right direction tonight, Alison? Do you see them winning handsomely or comfortably, or will it be a nervy night again?
No, I would fancy that it would be fairly comfortable this evening. As I said, I would suspect that Celtic will go for the jugular. I think there will be more goals. I think the balance of the tie after the 2 legs would be fairly emphatic.
Well, that's been the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I hope you've enjoyed it. And as you can see at the bottom, subscribe to the Celtic Way now for only £1 a month for the first 6 months, and support top quality journalism covering the club that you love. I've been Tony Haggerty. It's been Alison McConnell. Thank you, Alison, for joining me.
Thank you.